Today's video is about database normalization, or I'm not weird and neither is my database, created by Misty Melody Kitzul. So what exactly is database normalization? Basically, it's getting rid of redundancies, which can breed errors, and it can also make your database a lot bigger, and it's about squashing anomalies, which are errors that can cause problems with your database. Anomalies? Just what are anomalies? And what can they do? And what types are there? First, there's an insertion anomaly. This is when you can't enter data because some other data hasn't been entered yet. One example is when you try to add a customer's address, but you cannot do so because you have not created the customer yet. Or if you're creating a customer order, you can't add a line item to the order if you haven't created the order yet. The second type of anomaly is an update anomaly. This is where you have duplicate information in several places in your database. For example, you may have a company that has your customer contact information in both the sales database and the marketing database. The problem with this is if somebody updates the information in one side, they don't update it automatically in the other side, and then you have bad data because you have multiple data. For example, if somebody mistyped your name in one of them, the database now has two different spellings for your name. The third type of anomaly is a deletion anomaly. This is when you go to delete some piece of information and it accidentally deletes something else. For example, maybe you have a customer who's no longer a customer, so you decide to delete them. However, all of their order information may be attached to them, and when you delete them, it also deletes all of their order information, which in turn can mess up all of your accounting and a correct accounting of your sales for the year. So how do we get rid of these anomalies? Well, there's a series of norm forms. A norm form, or a normal form, is basically a set of rules that you follow to help you eliminate various anomalies. While there actually are more than 3 norm forms, for most databases you only have to worry about the first 3. So what's first norm form? First norm form gets rid of repeating groups or arrays. It also makes sure that each attribute or column in a database table represents only one value, and that each row is unique. Why don't we take a look at an example of this? In this first table here, there's a couple of things going on that should not be in a database. In the first column, or attribute, it's called class/instructor. This is not really cool because you're asking the column or the attribute to do 2 things when each one should only represent one piece of information, either class or instructor. In the second column, there's students, but there's multiple students named in each field. This is not good for a database, and it makes sorting data a nightmare. To put the information in first norm form, you need to split the class and instructor into 2 separate attributes, and you need to list each student separately. The second table shows what should be done to make this work. So now your data is happier, but there's still a lot more to do. Second norm form takes getting rid of anomalies one step further. Basically, second norm form gets rid of functional dependencies. A functional dependency is basically a sub-theme within your data. For example, if you have a table that is talking about both artists and the tracks on a CD, but it's in one table, that's really 2 concepts in one table. They need to be broken up. And that's basically what second norm form is. Let's take a look at an example. In the unnormalized data, you can see that we have an ID, class, instructor, instructor phone, tutor day, and tutor hour. This is a class tutor table to show when the tutor sessions are for each class. But what we really have here is repeating data and 2 different sub-themes. We have a sub-theme about class instructor information, and we have a sub-theme about tutor session information. So what we really need to do is break these up into 2 tables. Not only does it make one entity one theme, but it also gets rid of repeating data where there might be errors. For example, in the first table, if you typed two different phone numbers for the instructor Kitzul, there would be bad data because there would be two different numbers instead of one phone number. In the second norm form tables, there's one table dedicated to the class instructor information and one table dedicated to the class tutor session information. So our data is happier, but it's not completely happy yet. Let's go take a look at third norm form. Third norm form gets rid of all the transient dependencies. Transient dependencies really need to go find their own home in a different table because they don't belong in the table they're in. Basically, a transient dependency depends on a non-key attribute for its meaning. We need to get rid of these and move them. Let's look at an example. In the first table, we have instructor information, the office they're in, what building it's in, and the office code. While this is really keeping track of instructor offices, this really needs to be broken into two tables because the office name and the building name is dependent on office code, which is not the key of the table. So what we need to do is break it into two tables. One table is the office code, office name, and building, and the other table links the office code to the instructor who lives in that office. So congratulations, you've made it through first, second, and third norm form. So what do we do from here? Let's take a look for a moment at what we've already covered. First off, repetition and anomalies cause errors in your database. And errors in your database can mess up your data integrity, so you really need to get rid of them. We took a look at 3 different anomalies that can add errors to your database: insertion, update, and deletion. We also talked about the first 3 norm forms and how they can remove errors. In first norm form, it's vital to get rid of repeating lists and arrays, and make sure that each column only talks about one type of value in the attribute. Second norm form gets rid of functional dependencies. Remember, one table, one theme. Any sub-themes need to be moved to their own table. And finally, with third norm form, we got rid of transient dependencies, which are anything that does not depend on the key for the table. Transient dependencies need to go find their own home in their own entity or table. Well, that concludes talking about database normalization. Thanks and have a great day.